Good evening, everybody. I'm going to do my best to get through this without needing a drink or a cough drop, another cough drop, or hacking. So bear with me. I'm going to try to make it short and sweet. My thing is not working tonight for some reason. Yeah, it's on to the light, but for some reason it won't advance the slides. All right, so taking a look at our end of the year data, one of the first things we're going to take a look at is the transfer in and out student data, DIBELS data, iReady reading, iReady math, the math interview, or math reasoning inventory, depending on the grade level, and then take a look at how we did on our district goals for the year. This is the first year that we've tracked the students transferring in and out of the district. We've been doing this by month. We reported out at our DLC meetings. I also reported out at our curriculum cabinet meetings with the admin council. So taking a look, you can see here by every grade level in the chart how many students transferred into the district and how many students transferred out. The number in parentheses says September because that encompassed the number of students that came in or out during the months of July and August as well. By month on the left-hand side, you can see I highlighted January because that seemed to be where we had the most students come in and out. We had 9 come in and 8 go out in the same month. For a total so far, we didn't have any in June. So for the year, we had 129 students enter the district and 84 students transfer out of the district for a total of 213 students, which represents about 16% of our student population. So the next part of that is us working with Linkit to tie the mobility rate to our student data and getting all of that so we can pull the student data based on the students that have been here with us versus the students that have come later. The first thing we're going to take a look at is DIBELS, and you'll notice in the square I added together the green and the yellow on here. On my screen they both look green, a dark green and a light green. The dark green is the core plus, which means students were above level, and green were students that were on level. So putting them together, I'm really pleased with the percentage of students that were on level or above for DIBELS this school year. So by the end of the year in kindergarten, we had 67% of our kindergartners on level according to DIBELS. And remember, I told you back in the fall that this was the lowest kindergarten class that we have had enter according to the iReady data. So they made tremendous growth in kindergarten. First grade, 61% of our students are on level. Second grade, 52. Third grade, 48. Fourth grade, 47. Fifth and sixth grade had huge jumps, 65% and 69% of the students being on or above grade level for DIBELS. Taking a look at comparing that to last year. So the row across the top are last year's numbers. The row on the bottom are this year's numbers. So taking a look, last year the kindergarten class ended at 56% of them being on level. This year our kindergarten class ended up at 67% of them being on level. They showed a lot of growth. You can look at this diagonally, so you can say that kindergarten last year in 2021 ended at 56% of them being on grade level, and this year in first grade, 61% of them. So there was an increase there. There was an increase from first to second grade pretty much stayed the same, 52% of the kids being on level. Second grade, there was a drop. Last year, the second grade class ended at 56% of them being on level. On third grade, 48% of them ended being on level. And same for third going into fourth, there was a dip there as well. Fourth graders going into fifth graders was a huge increase, 51% to 65%. And fifth grade going into sixth grade was definitely another big increase of 58% to 69%. This data is showing you each grade level from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So always, as I always tell you guys, you want to see the green get bigger and the red get smaller. There is a little bit of concern with third grade. We had 42% were intensive for word reading fluency. That actually, the intensive area got bigger from the fall to the end of the year. I did take a look back at this grade level. When the pandemic hit, they were in kindergarten, And when we had that modified schedule of the cohorts A and B, they were in first grade. The oral reading fluency for accuracy for them, though, went from 33% intensive to 7% intensive. So it was the one subtest area of word reading fluency that brought them down for the intensive. Same thing for fourth grade. Oral reading fluency, words read correctly, our intensive level went up, and for maze, our intensive level went up, and that's how we assess comprehension. It could have been the passage that was used for the end of the year assessment when we were doing the individual student results. There were some students that scored lower than expected in all of their other, in maze than in all of their other comprehension areas. So it was just something to take a look at. Also for 5th and 6th grade, you can see we definitely did better and there was growth, but when we're taking a look at the intensive, there's only a couple percentage point difference. So I wanted to take a look at that. That is also the oral reading fluency words read correctly component. It's weighted the most in the Dibbles composite score. 5th and 6th grade is typically when we see that if a child is more of a slow reader and they're not going to get a lot of words read correctly in 1 minute on a timed test, but we also take a look at that maze to make sure it's not impacting their comprehension, and also taking a look at the iReady scores as well. Moving on to iReady reading, you can see this is from fall to spring, and we had great growth in all areas. So just taking a look at the dark green is your mid or above grade level, and we grew from 11% to 41% across the district. Early on grade level, we went from 16% to 19%. One grade level below declined, which is great, 49% to 28%. Two grade levels below, 17% to 8%, and three or more grade levels below went from 8% to 4%. So we definitely saw a lot of growth in the iReady reading across the board. This is by grade level. So taking a look, remember I told you kindergarten, they were the class that wasn't really kindergarten ready. 92% of them were not kindergarten ready when they entered, and exiting 66% of them were mid or above grade level, and 19% of them were early on level, and 14% of them were one grade level below. First grade, huge growth in first grade as well. The mid or above grade level went from 8% to 52%, and the early on grade level went from 7 to 17. You'll note our yellow group, which is, we call them our tier 2 group, made the most growth. And we'll take a look at that later when we take a look at our district goals as well. This is from last spring to this spring. So when you take a look on here, if you remember in the winter, the national norm data was 1920 because that was the last time they had the whole population. Now for end of year, it's 1819 because the pandemic hit in March of 1920. We did not do the end of year diagnostic. Nobody did the end of year diagnostic. So there was no normed data to go back to. In 1819, only 977 students were assessed, and that's because 5th and 6th grade were not doing iReady yet at that time. So when we're taking a look, there's a big difference between the number of students that were assessed in 21-22 and 22-23 compared to that, and that is why. We did better than we did last year, and we're trending towards how we performed in 18-19 prior to the pandemic. When we're looking at us compared to the state and then us compared to the national norm, we did better with iReady. So 40% of our students were mid or above grade level, and only 37% of the students in the state were mid or above grade level. And from 18-19, 38% of the students were mid or above grade level. Our one early on grade level was the same across the board. Interesting, national, New Jersey, and us were all 19%. We did have the most students that were one grade level below, but we were the same when it came to 2 grade levels below at 8%, and we had lower than anyone at 3 grade levels below, according to the iReady reading. Some of the takeaways, they're going to be the same as they were from the winter data. So the phonics instruction is working and it's impacting data in a positive way. Oral reading fluency accuracy continues to grow in grade levels 2 through 6. Our interventionists are moving from phonics to vocabulary and comprehension interventions in grades 3 through 6, and we're trending back towards the pre-pandemic levels. Some of our target areas in kindergarten and first grade was phonemic awareness, and grade 1 through 3, nonsense word fluency, correct letter sounds, automaticity in the phonics skills to meet the DIBELS 1-minute time subtests, vocabulary and comprehension. I did want to point out, because phonemic awareness has been an area that we've struggled in for the last several years, and we really paid a lot of attention to that this year. And some of the coaches worked with some kindergarten and first grade teachers, and I just wanted to make sure that I let you know at the beginning of the year, 60% of the kindergarten class was intensive when it came to phoneme segmentation fluency. And at the end of the year, 40% of them were intensive. So we decreased that from 60% to 40%. Last year, 70% of the kindergarten class was intensive when it came to phoneme segmentation. They ended first grade at 8% being intensive for phoneme segmentation fluency. So the teachers are attacking it in their classrooms in different ways, and we're having those conversations to figure out what are the best ways to do that, and you can see the gains in what they're doing in their classrooms. For iReady math, you're gonna see some major growth from fall to spring. At the beginning of the year, only 4% of our students were considered mid or above grade level, and we ended the year at 41%. Early on grade level, 12% of our population was, and now we're at 24%. One grade level below was 61% of our population. At the end of the year, we're at 28% being one grade level below. We went from 15% to 4% for 2 grade levels below, and 8% to 3% for 3 or more grade levels below. This is by grade level from fall to spring, and again, that kindergarten class is really impressive. 93% of them were grade level below when they entered, and 66% of them are leaving mid or on grade level. You can see there's a lot of growth in first grade as well, and across the board. The green got bigger, some of the yellows got a little bit smaller, or they could have even, I don't think any of them got bigger, but the reds all decreased as well. From spring to spring, so how did we do last year, and then how did we do compared to 18-19? We did better than last year, and we're trending towards where we were during pre-pandemic. We're not quite there, but also remember 18-19, there was only 978 students that were assessed because 5th and 6th grade are not counted in that data. So we were at 52% of the student population being on or above grade level, ended this year at 40%. How did we do compared to the state and the national norms? So we did better than we did if we compare it to the state and the national norms for the end of the year. Looking at our math reasoning inventory and our math interviews. So math interview is K to 2, math reasoning inventory is grades 3 through 5. The first one to the left is our kindergarten class, and they take the whole numbers, math interview, and they take it in the middle of the year and the end of the year. So you can see that they grew. 92% of them were on level in the middle of the year, and 94% were on level at the end. The at risk, the yellow, went from 8% to 6%, and the subtest where we saw the most challenge for our students was part whole, and that was through first grade and second grade as well. Looking at first grade, you can see there's definite growth between 90% at the end of, hold on, 2021, sorry, yes, last year to this year at this time. So when they ended first grade last year and how they ended first grade this year. In second grade, we had part whole was the biggest concern for us, as well as benchmarks 5 and 10, because that subtest, we had about the same number of students in the emergent category as we did last year. This is fall to spring. So in kindergarten, so if I confused you, the last slide was spring to spring. This slide is from fall to spring or middle of the year to spring. In first grade, we went from having some emergencies at the beginning of the year to having 0 emergencies at the end of the year. And the at-risk population went from 11% to 6%. Again, part whole was our biggest need. And in second grade, in the middle of the year, the students transition and take the multi-digit math interview. And at the end of the year, they take that math interview as well. You can see that the green got a lot bigger. So we went from 68% to 83% of the kids being on level. The at-risk and the intensive level also decreased. And again, the part whole and the benchmarks of 5 and 10 were the weakest areas. For grades 3 through 6, this is third grade's first time taking the MRI. They used to take the math interview. And taking a look at their data from beginning of year to end of year, they had great growth overall. The students in fourth grade, they made gains in addition and subtraction, and when reviewing the subtest data, did a little slide backwards on multiplication and division. So we'll be making sure that we check that when they take the MRI at the beginning of fifth grade. In fifth grade, in the middle of the year, they transitioned to taking the fractions and decimals MRI. So they take that in the middle of the year and the end of the year. And in sixth grade, you can see there was great growth between the beginning of the year and the end of the year as well. Some takeaways for math: there was a lot of growth overall. Fluency in the math relationships is growing in the lower grade levels. Intervention needs are decreasing and remediation needs are increasing, and that's exactly what we want to see. Trending back towards pre-pandemic levels. We really want to see our on-level and above-level students make more growth. We're closing the gaps between the on-level and the below-level students, and we're really looking to focus, and we have a goal for next year, focus on increasing student accountability and independence in math, and having them be able to apply their strategies independently and confidently. So taking a look at the district goal, I put this slide up here because I wanted to take you back to last year. Our district goal last year was for our stretch growth, and overall 62.5% of our students met their stretch growth target. We had taken a look at this data, and we were only expecting in reading 34% of the tier 1 students to meet their stretch growth, 27.5% of the tier 2, tier 3 was 22%, and we knocked it out of the park. If you take a look beneath where it says reading, actually 40% of our students in tier 1 made that stretch growth, 32% in tier 2 and 24% in tier 3. In math, we were shooting for 25%, 22%, and 20%, and we got 27, 30, and 23. So on this slide, if you look over on the chart for the 22-23 school year, we originally had 39%, 32.5%, and 27% for reading, but we had already met it. So when we created the goal for this school year, we upped the percentage of students that we wanted to reach their stretch growth. So when we take a look at that data for this year, this is what we upped it to. So for 22-23, we upped it to 44% of tier 1 kids making their stretch growth in reading, 36% of tier 2 kids meeting their stretch growth, and 28% of the tier 3 kids meeting their stretch growth. For math, we wanted 35% of the tier 1 kids to reach their stretch growth, 34% of tier 2, and 27% of tier 3. So I know this will look familiar to the board, these slides. We had 65% of the students meet the stretch growth in math, and 60% of the students meet the stretch growth in ELA, which again brings us back to 62.5% of our students meeting the stretch growth in the district overall. But we upped where we wanted them to be this year compared to where they were last year. So if we just look at the percentages, it might be a little bit confusing saying, well, we had 62.5 last year and 62.5 this year. I don't know that they made a lot of growth, but we made so much growth that we upped the bar to what we wanted them to meet, and they were still able to meet it. So we did, if you look at ELA here, the tier 2 kids, every group of tier 2 met their stretch growth. We had 3 groups in Tier 1 meet their stretch growth for ELA, and in Tier 3, 5th and 6th grade met their stretch growth goals. And then for math, we had all but 1 grade level in Tier 1 reach their stretch growth, and all but 2 grade levels in Tier 2 reach their stretch growth when looking at iReady. That's all I have for the student achievement data. Are there any questions on this?
I have a couple questions, just a comment. In regards to the last year and this year, the numbers that we were given were submitted by admins, correct?
I'm sorry.
The goal for this year, those numbers, the percentages were submitted by admins
Yes.
to us, and it was agreed on both parties that that would be the district goal, correct?
For the iReady you're talking about, yes.
All right, just wanted to make sure. All right, I have a couple questions. You may not, I just saw this at 4, so you may not have the answers, and that's fine, Jamie, if you want to email them to me. How many, I know in the beginning you talked about the transfer information.
Yes.
How many transfers in are or were currently in the tier for the year? How many transfers out were or are, were in the tier when they left?
Trish, I'm sorry, do you have those 2 questions?
Yes.
Okay.
And I can email them to you.
If not, I can ask
Yeah.
Henry to write them down.
And I know we've had this conversation before, how Dibbles and iReady is, they don't match in regards to what it says our students.
Right, they're assessing different things.
4th grade. Again, why do we have, what is the discrepancy? What are we recognizing as a discrepancy between what Dibbles is telling us and what iReady is telling us?
Well, we're definitely starting to see the phonics and the phonemic awareness of iReady and Dibbles coming together, and that bigger disparity in the comprehension and vocabulary component.
So that's from the iReady?
From the iReady and looking at Dibbles together. So strengthening Dibbles, but we're also strengthening those subtests in iReady as well. So when we swung the pendulum back to that intervention and really focused on the phonics skills for our basic skills students, and when we put in benchmark workshop phonics for K through 4, we have seen growth in those areas, and now we're like, okay, we don't need the intervention as much as we used to. We used to have a number of students in 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade that needed phonics interventions, and we're not seeing that anymore. We're seeing the interventions move more towards comprehension, vocabulary, and comprehension for literature and nonfiction text.
So, if I'm understanding you right, then in regards to 4th grade and 3rd grade, the needs are based primarily in comprehension as opposed to foundational skills?
Yes, they're moving in that direction. 4th grade more than 3rd grade. At the beginning of 3rd grade, we see that first intervention period still being more phonics, but we're also able to bring more fluency students into the mix at that time.
How many students ended in the tiers for math and ELA? I know we only got numbers for 1st and 6th grade at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I have those. Yes, I can give those to you.
And what's the number of kindergartners that are leaving kindergarten in the tier?
Okay.
How many students are not in RTI, but are in that bottom 40% in regards to iReady and or Dibbles?
Okay.
So for instance, our grade level 2-3 is a lot bigger than the number of students that we are putting into a tier. So I'm just looking to see how many students are not in the tier but are in that bottom portion.
Yes, so we started tiering those students as, I started tiering them at a 1.5 is what I've been calling them, where the remediation needs, so I will have those numbers for you pretty easily. And we're able to give those numbers to the principals as well, so when they're rostering the students, they have tier 2, tier 3, and the 1.5s are the ones that still need support. They're not at grade level yet, but they still need a remedial support.
So what are we considering a tier 1?
Our tier 1 is our on level.
Okay, so we don't have a tier 1, we just have tier 2 and tier 3?
No, we have a tier 1. The tier 1 is all of our students, what they get in tier 1 in their classroom. And then when we're looking at tier 2 and tier 3, we were looking at it through an intervention lens because our numbers were so great.
So what's the difference between a T1 and a 1.5?
So a
Somebody is getting some attendance,
A T1, a 1.5 is a kid that just needs a little bit of support on grade level material, where your tier 2 and tier 3 are more that intervention, like they're not, might not even be on grade level.
and not
Okay. Anything else?
Gene, have you guys considered removing that September data from the in and out?
We're actually going to do it differently this year. We're going to do July, August, September.
Okay.
And that,
Obviously, that's like an outlier.
yes, yeah. And so that's why when we were looking at it, Troy and I both decided moving forward, and Chelsea has already created the Google Sheet for this coming year to start July, August, September, so we can tease them out even further.
Yeah. Thank you. Are there any other questions?